Hi, I'm Jay Taylor, host of Turning Hard Times into Good Times. On June 28th episode of Turning Hard Times into Good Times, I interviewed Michael Spreadborough of Novo Resources, who provided an update on the company and how management plans to overcome the startup production obstacles it has faced that has caused it now to pause production until such a time as it gets approval to mine the fresh rock, the higher grade fresh rock on the Beatons Creek project. On June 29th, that's the following day, I interviewed Bob Moriarty about Novo's trials and tribulations because few people have been closer to the Novo story from its beginning than Bob Moriarty. In fact, Bob has written a book about Novo titled What Became of the Crow. Like myself, Bob has not given up on Novo because there are many reasons for optimism if you know the complete story. I think Bob's insights are very important to listen to if you own shares of Novo. If you don't, you might want to keep that company's story on your radar because nothing has really changed from the earlier fundamentals of the Beatons Creek project and the greater Novo exploration story. With Michael Spreadborough at the helm, the company is moving towards production pending approval by the Australian government. And unlike the previous startup production, this time the company will have completed a full feasibility study. Please listen now to Bob Moriarty's insights regarding Novo Resources, which he provided to me on June 29th. We talked earlier today to Michael Spreadborough of Novo Resources. Novo is a company that you know very well. I know they've had their difficulties, and a lot of people are blaming Novo for those problems. I think Michael offers some good reason for optimism, having to do with the higher grade fresh rock. They've got a lot of great targets that they're looking at exploring and developing, and their mechanical sorting is phase 2 of that is going along very well. They're getting rid of 99% of the rock for all the gold that's contained within that mass of rock. I think there's a lot of things to be optimistic about, but the share price has really hit the skids, to say the least. What's your take on Novo right now, Bob?
Actually, that's very good because certainly one of the people who's taken a lot of blame for Novo, and I hear about this on a daily basis, is me. And I've got people saying, well, gee, you used to comment a lot, and now you don't say anything. Well, there's a lot of things that I couldn't say. Mm-hmm. And I listened to your interview with Mike Spreadborough, and I actually like the guy a lot. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's writing off Novo is making an absolute mistake, and I feel sorry for them. Let's talk about the grade and the production and the fresh rock. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They use a term that I've never seen used anywhere else. When they're talking about fresh rock, they're actually talking about hard rock. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the material that they've been producing for the last year is the unconsolidated oxide material.
Right.
There's a lot of free gold in it. When they tested it, and they had a very expensive and extensive testing program, they came up with 2.3 to 2.5 grams. That would have allowed production of probably 100 to 120,000 ounces a year. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The fresh rock and the unconsolidated oxide rock are exactly the same material. Mm-hmm. The only difference is some of it's hard rock and it's in chunks, and some of it's unconsolidated and it's loosely packed. When they were mining the oxide material, they would blast it, and they would take loaders and they would dump it in dump trucks, and they would take it to the mill and process it. They had tested it at something like 2.3 to 2.7 grams a ton, and the production was only 1.3 to 1.4. Mm-hmm. Two things happen. One is The labor market in Australia is the tightest and worst in the world. You can pick up the phone and get a job at a higher salary if you know anything. A geologist with a year, 2 years experience, which means a geologist who has no clue, can make $170,000 a year. Okay, a truck driver can make $200,000 a year. It is an extremely expensive, difficult labor market. Mm-hmm. Now, what happened was the guy who was in charge of grade control left and went somewhere else. And it doesn't make any difference what the reason was. I'm not saying he was a bad person or made a mistake. But the guy who had been doing rather a good job for grade control left. They actually hired 5 different junior geologists to bring them in and to try to bring them up to speed so they would get the grade of the material up. And not a single one of the 5 actually worked out. Now, somewhere between the blasting, the loading into the trucks, the driving to the mill, there was a gram of gold per ton just disappearing. And it wasn't stolen. It was either left in the last half inch, the bottom half inch of the pit, or it fell out of the truck, or it disappeared and it's sitting in the mill at the very bottom of the pile. So the solution, and they knew the solution is to produce a fresh rock, because fresh rock, the gold doesn't drop out of.
Right.
I think the grade of fresh rock is 2.8 grams, which would take them up to that 100 to 120,000 ounces a year. The problem is the labor market in Australia is so bad, they should have actually put in the permit for the fresh rock a year and a half ago. They never anticipated how difficult it would be. They actually put the request in for the permit in March, hoping that it would be a 6 week, 2 month adventure. When they called 6 weeks or 2 months later, the people at the government agency said, "Oh, the guy that's in charge of that quit, and we're going to hire somebody."
They hadn't even started the process, probably.
Exactly. And then they hired somebody, and they came back and said, "Okay, another couple of months, we'll get back to you." And then he quit. And then the first guy came back. So I really admired Novo because they bit the bullet, and for the first time in 20 years, they told Novo investors, by the way, we're screwed. Okay? We're at the mercy of the people who do the permitting. And unfortunately, that's true. Now, the gold is there. Mike Spreadborough's got a great is a great leader. He's got good people. They've got a $200 million mill. They've got the gold. I mean, I wrote a book, and unfortunately, nobody's reading the book now because Novo's turned into such a disaster. But it's not because of Novo. I would love to say, well, this guy screwed up, or this guy screwed up, or this guy screwed up, and it's just not so. The gold is there. And actually, the what Mike alluded to, De Grey has that Hemi project.
Yes.
And I think he said 8 or 10 million ounces. I owned De Grey at 5 cents a share for a couple of years, and then it shot up to $1.20. Okay. De Grey was up, let's see, that's 20, 30, 40 fold. No, it's not 40 folds, up 20 fold.
Yeah.
Okay, in about 6 months. And Novo has the ground right next to them, and they're on the same formation. So anybody writing Novo off, I think, is making a real serious mistake. I own Novo. I'm quite happy to own Novo. I'm certainly looking at buying more, and I think it's a good opportunity. And I'm sorry that these issues have come up, but they do come up. This
Yeah.
is my business. Nobody said it was going to be easy.
No, that's true. It's a very tough business, Bob. And I think I mean, this is every company has their own story. Every project is different, and we can spend a lot of time understanding. Sometimes companies are doing extremely well, and the share prices still get knocked down in markets like this. So, in sort of winding up here, I'd like to ask you to talk a little bit about sentiment. You have some ideas about sentiment and how investors can really learn a lot uh, with regard to sentiment to know where the markets are going and where they're headed next, I guess.
That's very good. And again, I will point to my two books, Basic Investing in Resource Stocks and Nobody Knows Anything, as being must read books. If you're going to be an investor and you can't spend $10 on each of those books, you're not an investor. You're a crapshooter. You need to go buy Bitcoin. But sentiment is very important. And again, it's an issue of asking the right question. Now, I'm going to trick you again. Okay. Jay, at bullish markets, what is volume in typical stocks in resource? What happens to volume?
Well, they really go up a lot. You can see a lot of volume when everybody's making money, everybody's jumping in, and not many people want to sell because they're looking for that higher numbers. And
Okay. In a bear market, when it's been a disaster and lots of stocks are down 60, 80, 90%, what happens to volume?
listen, I have a number of those companies that I think are very good. I think they got great projects, but I can't sell them now. There's no volume. Nobody wants to pay anything for them because they think the market's going to go down lower. They're not looking at the intrinsic value or the fundamentals of the story. They're just simply piling on with the rest of the market or bailing out.
Okay, that's very good. And the strange thing is that those were not trick questions. Those are questions that any investor could ask themselves. But to the best of my knowledge, none of the gurus, none of the experts actually talk about that. Knowing whether you're in a bear market or a bull market is as simple as looking at the trading volume and seeing. And actually, it occurred to me, I need to talk to one of the guys who's capable of doing it. Somebody needs to be tracking it because you could come up with some kind of chart showing trading volume, and that would be exceptionally valuable information. And I don't think anybody has that. I'd like to see somebody do it, and I'm way too lazy to do it myself. But right now, there's very low liquidity. There's no trading volume whatsoever. You get stocks down 10 or 15% in a day because somebody's gotten a margin call and it's being forced out of their position. That is opportunity knocking at the door. And all you have to do is go to the door and say, come right in, Mr. Opportunity. We're going to have a party. We are going to have an exceptional opportunity shortly to buy stocks very cheap. Now, there's something, you remember the chart that I just sent you a couple of days ago? Okay, it's called the Gold Miners Bullish Percent Index. The symbol is $ Bravo Papa Golf Delta Mike. And it's something that I track, and it shows you the bullish the bullish percent index, stocks going up or stocks going down. And if you look at that, you can compare it to highs and lows in the past. And it hasn't gotten down as low as it did in March of 2020. But it's the lowest it's been pretty much except for one time since then. So it's not an absolute bottom yet, but it's close.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. And folks, we will be keeping up with the Novo story on my radio show going forward and in my newsletter, Jay Taylor's Gold, Energy, and Tech Stocks. And folks, thank you very much, Bob. And folks, we will be keeping up with the Novo story in my newsletter, Jay Taylor's Gold, Energy, and Tech Stocks, and on this radio show. Bye for now.